It's 6 o'clock. I'll call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Manitou Springs City Council for September the 3rd, 2024. And yes, it is September already. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Which is one nation under God, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before I ask the city clerk to call the roll, I will mention that Councilor Johnson is not feeling well, so she's going to be joining us by Zoom. And if she gets to feeling poorly, Natalie, you would be excused. We hope you're feeling better. Hope you can follow along. Also, Mayor Pro Tem Fortune is going to be a little bit late. She said she'd get here as soon as she can, but she had an engagement she couldn't avoid. So with that, if the city clerk would please call the roll.
City Council members Drew the Chandler,
Present.
John Shada, Julie Wolf,
Here.
Natalie Johnson,
Here.
Michelle Weatherholt,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune is late, and Mayor John Graham.
Present. Thank you. Okay. Council, you've all had a chance to review the agenda, so I would seek a motion to approve the agenda.
I move to approve the agenda.
I'll second it.
Motion is second. Elena, how do you want us to vote? Electronically?
No, can you just do verbal real quick?
Excuse me, just
Verbally.
verbally, okay. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? No. Okay, the agenda is approved. The next item is public comment on non-agenda items. This is a time when anyone in the audience is invited to comment on a non-agenda item. You have up to 3 minutes to speak, and you would come forward. Do we have anyone who wants to speak tonight? I guess not. Elena, did we have any email communications? Okay. All right, so we'll move on then. Next item is the consent calendar. We have 4 items on it tonight. The first is approval of the August 2024 City Council regular meeting minutes. The second is Resolution 1424, a resolution of the City of Manitou Springs, Colorado, approving a third amended and restated intergovernmental agreement for the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority funded capital projects and maintenance programs. 3, approval of holiday lighting quote from Christmas Decor by Timberline for $59,124.10. And 4, requesting approval of a contract with Matrix Design Group Incorporated for the Dillon Mobility Hub project. If any counselor would like to pull an item off and discuss it separately, we can certainly do that. If not, I would seek a motion to accept and approve the council. Councilor Chandler?
I'd like to remove item F for the Dillon Mobility Hub project.
Okay, thank you. We'll discuss that separately then. Julie, sorry.
I have a quick question on number 3, so I'd like to remove F3 as well.
3, okay. Anything else? Okay, then in that case, I would seek a motion to accept and approve items F1 and F2 of the consent calendar. That's the August 20 regular meeting minutes, and then the IGA with PPRTA.
So moved.
Can we have a motion? Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Let's go ahead and, Lena, how do you want us? Electronically? Okay, we'll vote electronically.
Councilor Johnson, how do you vote?
I approve.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, I guess we're getting closer to working on Serpentine Drive then. We've got the IGA money, PPRTA money. Great, okay, so the next item, approval holiday lighting quote. Julie, I believe that was you.
Oh, my only question on that was, it looked from the packet, although I wasn't totally clear, that this includes the URA area. Is that correct? Or no?
I believe it does not include the URA.
Yeah,
Just
my
thinking-
apologies if
Sure.
I didn't make that clear. The URA is a separate thing.
Okay. That was my only question.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions relative to the Christmas lighting? If not, then I would, and your question's been satisfied, Julie?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, you're good. Okay.
Yeah,
And then
I
I,
mean, I'm happy to make a motion to approve F3.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, motion is second. Let's vote. Counselor Johnson, how do you vote?
I approve.
Thank you.
Can you guys enter your votes again, please?
Vote again? Okay, we'll vote again.
Motion carries unanimously.
Great, thank you. So item
Thank
F.
you.
Oh, thanks, Becca. Item F3 is approved. Next item, F4, and Counselor Chandler, you got a question about that or concern?
I have a few comments. I am certainly not opposed of moving forward with a single source contract in the interest of time. And I thought the Matrix contract was very detailed. I'm grateful to see the word bioswales for the first time used in a development plan. But I do have a few comments and questions. The first being on page 3 of the 20-page written contract. Under final landscape plan, of course, I'm going to talk about trees. There's a sentence, quote, a tree preservation plan may also be included if requested, unquote. I'd like to request that. And my motive for that is there are many, many old growth trees there with a beautiful canopy. And we've had other construction projects where we've lost quite a few of our tree canopy, and the URA is notorious for being blighted with regards to tree canopy. On page 4 of that same contract, under task number 5, under ecological characterization study, it does say that the scope of work includes a tree/vegetation pattern survey. I don't really know what that means, but I would request that tree preservation plan be included in that ecological characterization study. The other question I have is on page 4 and into page 5. Under task 6, wetland delineations and section 404 permitting. It states, you find that, hang on, of course, jump to 6, hang on just a second. This is in regards to the wildlife and the, okay, there's some conflicting sentences here on with that issue.
Judith, can you give us the site so we know like 5 point something like that?
It's on the Matrix contract, the written contract, the 20-page contract. It's on page 5. And it's under wetland delineation and section 404 permitting. This area happens to also be a pretty interesting wildlife habitat, which is why I'm asking this question, because it says in this large paragraph, quote, during the wetland delineation, Matrix will evaluate the project area for threatened and endangered species habitat. It goes on to call out particularly that this is a habitat for Mexican spotted owls and tricolored bats that are in this area. They are listed, these species are listed under the Endangered Species Act. And it goes on to say, as deemed appropriate through USACE consultation, we will provide a biological assessment to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to obtain their approval via a biological opinion for this project. But then on page 10 of the same contract, under number 15, it says, quote, consultation with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding potential endangered species will not be part of this scope of work. So I would like to know before I do a thumbs up, is it or is it not considered the scope of work of this contract? So that's, and then lastly, I have one more item. Also on page 20, this was just a little confusing to me. This might be correct, but I just want to make sure. On number 4, it says no submittal fees, permit fees plating fees, review fees, financial assurances are the responsibility of the owner. So are they all the responsibility then of Matrix? Or, right. So they're our responsibility because, and only reason I'm asking of that, because I only saw one permitting fee in the actual schedule. So that's correct. Okay, so that would be my only two things are the tree preservation plan and then finding out whether the scope of work for the endangered species is going to be taken care of. Or is that part of the scope of work? Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Good evening. Counselor, can you repeat that one more time, please?
Yeah, Juan, just your
Oh,
name
I'm
and
sorry.
title, please.
Juan Alvarez, Mobility and Parking Director.
Two items. Item number one was on page 3 under final landscape plan. It says a tree preservation plan may also be included if requested. I would like to request that and have it part of task number 5 in the ecological characterization study. And then the second question is referring to page 5 of the contract. It states that Matrix will provide a biological assessment to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to obtain their approval via a biologic opinion for this project. And there's a very large paragraph on that page, and it's toward the bottom of that paragraph, if you're looking for it. But then it the contract contradicts itself on page 10, item 15, which says, and I quote, consultation with the United States Fish and Wildlife Service regarding potential endangered species will not be part of this scope of work. So I would like to know what I would like it to be included, and I would like a report. So is where I'm sitting on that. And those are my two questions.
Understood. I will find out for you to confirm that information is correct.
And Mayor, I'll have to defer to you on how to move forward because pending the answers to those questions, I would vote for it. So.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's see if there's any, if other members of council have other questions or would like to expand upon those. We have any other comments, Julie?
I just was wondering, Jeff, did you have a chance to look over this? And if so, is that in fact a contradiction?
So no, I did not read over this scope. So, but I'm trying to figure out if it's a contradiction or not by right now. But it does seem like it, when I'm reading it, it says we will provide a biological assessment to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to obtain their approval via a biological opinion for this project. That's the language that Councilmember Chandler is citing from page 5. And then I'm just going to read it myself while we're doing this, just so I can think this through. And then point number 15 on page, I have it on page 11 of my version, but consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding threatened or endangered species.
Are those two separate things perhaps? Maybe they're saying they'll do the initial application. And then if it comes back that there's some concern about, the species that might be threatened, then that's when they start charging us? They'll just do the initial document maybe?
It's not clear to me, to be honest with you, it's not clear. But yeah, I think we probably want to clarify that just if we really want to make sure those are done. So it's not clear.
Yeah, Jeff, can you speak a little closer to the mic too?
Oh,
so we
yeah,
can-
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's okay.
Well, going forward, Mayor, it seems to me that we could go ahead if we wanted to and approve this subject to the conditions that these certain sentences be changed. And then if it's a problem with Matrix not liking the change, then we'll have an issue. We'll have to come back, but we could still go ahead, I think, and do an approval with certain conditions if that's the direction we want to go in so that we can move forward without having a contract that
Yeah, I
makes no
think that's,
sense.
I think that's constructive suggestion. I did want to ask Denise, I think we're trying to fast track this. I think that's part of the concern. And that's why we went to the single source because they've had some experience with the property. They're already, Matrix is already familiar with a lot of the problems in the territory there. Denise, I guess I would, if we
Yeah.
hold up the contract, it's going to really, I think, impact our schedules. That,
Yeah, if you just make a motion that those two things need to be done, then we'll go ahead back up to Matrix. We'll make it happen and we'll sign the contract. So we just need the motion that you approve it based on those two, and then we go back and make sure it's done.
right, yeah, I'm thinking we can iron the details out without holding up momentum, because we're probably 99% agreed, and then we just have to nail down these little points.
Do you need a motion, Mayor?
Well, let's just see if there's any further discussion. I don't think there is, but Natalie, okay, wanted to get a chance. Yeah, if you'd like to make a motion, I think that'd be okay.
I move to approve the contract with Matrix Design Group for the Dillon Mobility Hub project pending, number one, a tree preservation plan to be included, and B, clarification on under the individual species surveys about the endangered species, whether they will or will not be providing anything to the United States Fish and Wildlife on these species. Sorry, I should make that shorter, but maybe Jeff, you can help me on that second one. To me, it's a clear,
I think you, I
it's
think,
contradicting itself.
yeah, and I got, my guess is that you want it to basically allow for, I want to make sure I get this accurate, because there's a couple ways to deal with this condition. I'm going to go back to the first provision.
My
I
apologies.
think that you want to be clear that under the provision on page 5, which basically says they will provide a biological assessment to U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to obtain their approval via a biological opinion. You want to be certain that that will actually be done.
Correct.
And we're just not clear what the other point 15 means. So we will clarify that that will occur, and then we can get clarity on point 15 to make sure that that won't prevent that from happening.
So I can rephrase the second part of that motion to be that we, pending that we receive clarity on that item regarding the United States Fish and Wildlife and the endangered species, that it will be done, that it is in the scope of work.
Understood.
I'll second that.
That's horrible. I'm sorry.
I'll second that as long as you'll change the word pending, the word subject to, that those be corrected.
Oh, and I also have a friendly amendment.
Okay. So can you want to,
That you
So
change the
not-
word to be subject to, that it's,
okay,
yeah,
That I
as
agree.
opposed to
That's fine.
pending. I don't know what pending would mean. So these are conditions we're
good
placing.
point. That
on.
might hold
Thank
up
you.
the contract. I'm fine with that friendly amendment. Looks like there's another one.
Okay, let's see. Julie?
I wanted to see if I could submit a friendly amendment to that motion,
Okay,
which is to say that we're approving it with the condition that the language on page 5 regarding the assessment and approval with Fish and Wildlife will remain intact, and requiring that, I think you said it was on page 10, that the contractor will also deal with, and I forget the exact language on page 10, but that they will be responsible for handling any concerns, or I forget how that was worded. In other words, I don't want clarification, because clarification is, they could just say, oh, okay, we won't do it. No, then we're stuck with it. So I'd rather they be required to do what it said on page 10 if I can find it.
I can read you the section that they say they will not. It says consultation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service regarding threatened or endangered species will not be completed as part of this scope of work. And I had originally thought we should just delete that, but I think that they meant that, but
That's
it's not
separate.
contradictory to what they're offering to do under page 3.
Is that right, Denise? What do you think? You're shaking your head.
Yeah, I don't think it's contradictory either. I think that they're going to do 3, but they're saying that regarding the issues and all those things, we're going to have to work with the US. It's us, it's our property. So we'll probably have to bring another consultant if there's an endangered species and stuff. So I don't read it as contradictory, but I want to make sure that you guys feel clear in what
So
you're
can
doing.
the word clarification stand then in the original motion?
You
Thank
bet.
Okay, then I withdraw my request.
Okay.
Yeah,
then-
last point is, I mean,
Okay.
we could probably add some language in there to just clarify that 3 is getting done, even though we have this exception in 15. That's what I meant by clarification, so.
Okay, so I think we've fine tuned it somewhat. Judith, I hate to ask you to do this, but I think since we're trying to give direction to staff, if you could restate your motion. I understand. Well,
Okay. Here's the easy part.
give it your best effort.
Okay. I move that we approve the contract with Matrix Design Group, Inc. for the Dillon Mobility Hub project, subject to number 1, a tree preservation plan is included. And 2, we receive clarification on what the scope of work will be regarding the Endangered Species Act and the United States Fish and Wildlife Report. Is that sufficient, Jeff? Are you
Yeah,
done?
that sounds good to me.
Okay, you're good with that, John? Okay.
Are you gonna second it again?
No second, okay, no, okay. And Elena, you were able to copy that down? So we have it for the, good, well. Dot all our i's, cross all our t's. Okay. Any further discussion, council? Okay, let's go ahead and vote.
Counselor Johnson, how do you vote?
I approve.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. So item F4 is approved. Our next piece of business is presentation. It's the Colorado Energy Office's performance contract audit update. Thank you, Juan.
Mayor, I'll just do a quick introduction
Okay,
if that's
Yeah,
okay.
please, yes, Denise.
Yeah, as you know, we signed the contract to have the energy audit completed. So they are about 60%, 80% complete, she'll say. And so she wanted to come back. We wanted to present that to council of our findings to date. It's not finalized, but it's just giving you an update as we move forward. So with that, I'll turn it over to Kate.
Great, thank you. If you
Okay.
could have your name and title.
Good evening. I'm Kate Ciplo with Schneider Electric, and thank you, Mayor and members of council. I'm pleased to provide an update, and I believe we have a short presentation as well. And my colleague Tyler Delala from Schneider Electric is joining us remotely. Okay, we can go to the next page. So we've spent quite a bit of time working with the city behind the scenes. So we wanted to provide an update on where things are at, where the project stands, and some of the opportunities and next steps that we have planned. So we actually helped the city do an assessment on all of its telecom contracts, and we found some pretty significant operating savings. So we're excited to share that. We have an update on a water meter replacement project citywide, which is also exciting. I know it's been a long time coming. So we're pretty pleased with where things are at, and we're confident that we can move forward with the water meter update. And then we'll go over where things stand financially and what our planned next steps are. Next page, please. Okay. So telecom. So even though this is technically an energy efficiency and water efficiency project, if you'll remember, the Colorado Energy Office has their energy performance contracting program, and these projects are meant to be self-funding with utility savings, operating savings, and also any additional revenue that we can generate through these infrastructure improvement projects. So one of the things that our team likes to do as a telecom assessment, we often find that folks are not using their desk phones anymore, for example. We can save on that. So you'll see here we evaluated a number of different contracts, resulting in over $100,000 in potential savings annually. So we're going to be extrapolating this over a longer period, about 5 to 10 years, based on the escalation rates that all of these vendors can provide us with. But so far, it provides us significant savings, and we can use that over time to fund some other improvements at City Hall that I know are long overdue. So we're excited to present those savings. So the water meters have taken up most of our time the last handful of months. We did apply for an EPA grant in February. This was the Water and Energy Efficiency Grant. Unfortunately, we just found out a few weeks ago we were not awarded that grant, and I believe it was for a number of different reasons. Being a federal grant, it was extremely competitive. It was open to all municipalities and special districts across the U.S. So there were a large pool of people who were competing for the money. So we thought, let's go ahead and throw our hat in the ring. However, a lot of the awarded entities were able to be very specific about the acre feet of water savings they would achieve with the projects that the grant would fund. At the time, we just didn't have enough data. Typically, water meters don't necessarily save water, but we took the purview that newer water meter technology actually has some leak detection technology available with it. And we'll talk a little bit on the next slide about where some of the water loss is happening in the city and how the new water meter technology would mitigate that. But I think that at the time, we just didn't have enough information. So we're going to be keeping our eye out on a couple more grants. We do have a congressional directed spending request that has made it to the next level, and we're just waiting for the appropriations bill to get passed October 1st on Capitol Hill. That is $500,000 that we requested, and we're fairly confident that that will come back to us. So fingers crossed for that. And there's also a DOLA grant that's opening in November. It's the Energy and Mineral Impact Assistance Fund. And I know that Denise has spoken with your DOLA rep about the possibility of getting some money for the water meter project. And he suggested that $1 million would be appropriate to request. So that would give the project a really wonderful boost. And the Schneider team is able and ready to assist with that grant application, as well as an in-person interview that would happen around February. So the only caveat with that DOLA grant is that the funds will not be released until April or May of 2025. And we are not allowed to do any work and reimburse ourselves retroactively. So the water meter project would have to wait until those funds are given out, but that's okay. We've got plenty of time to get all of our other ducks in a row and be ready to hit the ground running. Also, seeing as water meters are usually underground or in folks' basements, especially during the off season, during wintertime, it can be challenging to do a project like this. So waiting until the springtime is much more feasible for a number of reasons. So that's an update on where we stand with the grants. And despite the fact that we did not get the EPA grant, we do believe a change out of all of the water meters citywide is still feasible within the context of this project. So I'm happy to report that. It might not come with all the bells and whistles we were hoping for, but it'll still get done. The water meters are really nearing the end of their useful life, and some of them are past the end of their useful life. So it's definitely time for this major infrastructure upgrade. And within the context of the energy performance contract, we will be able to fund this with additional revenues, which we'll talk about on the next slide. And I will pass it to my colleague, Tyler Delala, joining us on the phone to talk about the water meter testing that we completed and some of the results and implications of that.
Thank you, Kate. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yes, the biggest portion of the project is the water meters, and as they're coming up to the useful life, and also with the estimated water loss between 30–40%, this is kind of a big portion of the project. For the water meter testing, this was a way to kind of really kind of see where things are currently. And we actually went into the field, identified the meters, took them out and shipped them off into a specific lab to actually do the actual testing of the accuracy of the meters, and this is kind of the result of that. We did target about 40 meters as part of our initial testing, but unfortunately we were only about to get 28 in total. But despite not making our goal of 40, we do feel like this is still a good representation and sufficient for this time, and a good representation of kind of what is actually going on in the field. Now you see 3 meter sizes there: 5/8 inch, 1 inch, and 1.5 inch. The 5/8 inches, that is kind of the primary focus for the project, as those are going to be the residentials, and that's going to be the vast majority of the water meters for this project. In general, and on the right-hand side there, you see kind of the weighted accuracy average. As you can see, the 5/8 inch, you see about 85%, and then 1 inch about 89%, and then 1.5, 100%, although we only got 1 in total there. For the 5/8, for the majority of the project, we did see quite a few, or at least a fair amount, that are showing 0 reads on minimum flow and intermediate flow. So they actually are showing absolute 0 reads. They're not reading anything going through the meter currently right now. It's kind of indicating the end of useful life for some of these water meters. On the 1 inch side, there are some inaccuracies. There were no 0 reads, but there were some inaccuracies on the low flow and medium flow side. Then obviously there was 100% on the 1.5 inch side. But what does this mean for our current analysis? So overall, we will take this data and kind of extrapolate it across all meters, but we're not going to be accounting for these exact meters or this exact quantity. We're going to be taking a portion of the water meter testing and kind of extrapolate that, kind of more of a conservative approach for our analysis. Currently right now, based off what we currently have and the data that we have, we're seeing about our estimate being about 141,000 increase in revenue projection, which is about 4.4%. And that does kind of factor in kind of our guarantee projections as well. Any initial questions or thoughts?
I might go ahead. Go ahead, Julie.
Julie, please.
What does 0 reads mean?
That there's actually, they're not reading any flow through the meters.
So that means there's no bill being generated, even though there's water flowing through the meter. The meter is essentially not reading anything, so the city's not recouping that revenue.
Okay, so the resultant weighted average accuracy of basically 85% for the residential. So that means that 15% of the residential meters are inaccurate?
What that means is all of the current meters are reading 15% inaccurately, meaning if their bill comes in at $85, it really should be $100, because that meter's losing its accuracy for several decimal points. So those fractional decimal points do add up quite a bit over time. So it means that the city is actually missing out on revenue.
Okay, so 85% of the residential properties are inaccurate because they're not reading all the water that's actually being used. Is that right?
No, across the board, all of the meters are 85% accurate.
Average.
Correct.
And the inaccuracy is necessarily because it's underreporting actual water usage?
Correct.
Okay, thank you for
You're
explaining.
welcome. So a couple more
Give
points.
me a couple
Sure.
questions. Here.
Oh.
Go ahead, Denise.
I just want to make a statement. We do go ahead and bill, but we will do estimates. So that is what happens. It may not be accurate. So if we get a 0 reading, it doesn't mean that we don't bill. We do an estimate. I will tell you right now, we've done an audit of all the accounts and preliminary. I don't want to make some numbers yet. We're at over 80 meters that we can't get a read on. And so that means we have to now go out and get a read, try to get it in the house, make appointments, et cetera, which takes more time and energy. And if we can't get it, then we're estimating again. So in a year, they could get a very high bill because we finally get a final read. So that's one of the issues, is these meters are 15 to 18 years old. They're at the end of their life. And they're going to continue to quit reading. That just happens with these meters.
And what is the total cost of the program?
We'll get to that on the next slide.
Oh, okay.
And it's still in the estimate phase, but we will get into some detail here in a moment.
Excuse me, John, I think you had a question.
Yeah, I was just real curious. On your starting slide, you talked about how we have a water loss of about 30 to 40%. So if we just cut that in half and in the middle and say 35%. So using this 85% thing, is what portion of this 35% that's disappearing is accounted for in these meters?
So those are two different units of measurement. What the meters are reading is one thing, and the total water loss, that's in the entire distribution system. So
I understand that. So what's the amount? I mean, if you're saying that the meters are short essentially 15%, okay, so we could take that 15% number of the amount we have. There's so many gallons. I'm just asking, how is that in proportion to the 35% that's losing? I'm trying to figure
I
out
see.
what we're losing in the meters as opposed to what we're missing in the distribution system in the pipes.
Got it. Thank you for the clarification. We can certainly get back to you with that figure.
Okay.
Obviously, what's being lost at the meter is going to be accounted for in that 30 to 40%, but 30 to 40% loss in the distribution system is quite high. So one of the things that we're evaluating currently is some leak detection technology to go with the water meters. There is an increased cost for that. It's an additional feature, but we do feel like that's going to help us triangulate and find the leaks in the main system. That way the city can address those and not have to go on a wild goose chase.
I guess I'm still at loss. If we replace all these meters and now we are at nearly 100% accuracy in measuring what's going on there, whether somebody's got a leaky toilet or whatever, we're still billing for it. I'm just trying to figure out what is a good number that we can understand that is before the meter and after the main meter at the water treatment plant. So I'm just trying to figure out how much work we have to do in the distribution system and how we get a handle on that. Does that mean we have to put some other meters in certain sections of town and figure out whether we've got a big loss up in Crystal Hills, or is it in, Ward 1, or whatever?
So again, that's the leak detection technology that comes with the water meters. So that would be a feature on every single water meter
Okay,
in the
so
city.
I'm still confused. If we're billing for the water on the other side of the meter, I don't understand how that informs us about where it's missing in the distribution system.
That's totally fair. I see where you're going. So what we can do, if it's acceptable, is do some minor calculations on our side. Again, we don't necessarily have much purview over the water distribution side, but we do have information about the water meters. So we can come up with a figure to figure out what the new water loss would be, assuming all of the meters are changed out and 100%
Yeah,
accurate.
and
Is that okay?
it seems like to me that then tells us what the loss is in the system. And, I don't think we want to use a whole bunch of chemicals and basically be sprinkling the whole town through the water distribution system. So it sounds like to me we got the meter thing in hand. I'm just trying to figure out how big of a problem is this meter thing in this 35% loss. So that's all I'm asking. Thank you.
I do want to give you, we did find a pretty big leak that we've repaired, and we haven't gotten exactly how much that takes the loss down, but we're expecting a pretty substantial decrease. It's been a leak that's been there for, we think, years, and we just found it and we were able to repair it. So next month, when we look at everything, I'll be able to give you a better idea of where our water loss, but it won't be at the 40% anymore, which is really good news. But I don't know if it's going to be at the 20 or the 25 or the 30, but it's going to be somewhere around there.
Thank you. And before we go on, I've got a couple of comments. And yeah, this has kind of been the water loss that we've had has been on my mind for quite a while. If I remember correctly, I think we treat about 600 acre feet of water a year. If we lose 30% of that, that's 180 acre feet of water. That's a considerable amount of money. That's environmentally, that's poor environmental stewardship. It's poor financial stewardship. So I like the idea that we're kind of come up with some ways to find out where the leaks are. I'm a little mystified as to how this is going to work. Maybe you can explain that a little farther on into the explanation here. A question going back to the slide that you had previously of meter accuracy results. So we're saying, say, for instance, the 5/8 inch meters are about 85% accurate. What are the odds that we're, I guess I have two questions. First, okay, we have some that are showing zero reads. Is that at all levels of consumption? In other words, if they just have the water on, it's trickling and it doesn't register, maybe if they turn everything on full blast, would that make a difference?
Correct. Yes, there's a low, medium, and high flow that's accounted for, and it's usually on the low flow end where we get zero reads.
Reads. Okay. So, I mean, it's having an old meter there is not great, but it's better than having no meter at all, I guess. Is that
correct?
Okay, so it's not okay. That answers it. Okay, and then the other thing is, okay, so if the meters are only 85% accurate, what are the odds that people are using less water than what we're building them for?
The odds are fairly substantial that the billing is currently inaccurate. I mean, we're making the assumption that the city's underbilling by about 15% on those 5/8 meters, assuming that's, citywide. And we'll be taking very conservative approaches to, again, we wanted to test 40 meters and we were able to test 28. So we're taking that into account and making sure that our calculations are conservative moving forward.
Okay, yeah, I mean, particularly for the 1 and the 1.5 inch water lines, those are not statistically encouraging. So, but it's what we've got.
Right. It would be a pretty big disruption for us to go into a commercial building and have to remove those meters and put in a new one for the testing period. So we took some municipal meters at the 1 inch and 1.5 inch level. That way it was just city buildings that were being disrupted for a couple of hours and not a local business.
Okay, thank you. If council doesn't have any other questions right now, we'll push on.
Okay.
Well, Judith?
Mayor, you
Denise.
asked the question, what are the chances of us overbilling somebody? And that is very slim. There might be, but I haven't seen that happen whenever you do a meter change out. We're usually underbilling. And I will say we did replace a commercial meter a year ago because we couldn't get reads. And once we replaced it, their water bill did go up. So it was not reading.
Thank you. Judith?
This is more of a comment and question, and it was in regards to slide number 3 on the telecom savings. You not only, recommend what we should no longer use, but recommend specifically companies we should go with. I just trust this council that we're going to take many variables into account when we look at these, including customer service. I'm going to give a plug for Rain Tech because it's on this slide. I mean, they've saved my life on so many occasions. Same day service, repairing his laptop so I could come to council when it was infected with this or that. And so I think I just want us to be very mindful that we look at all these variables and not just focus on the cost, but also focus on these companies' track records, their reliability, their turnaround, and and their ability to really give Manitou really excellent service. Thank you.
And I appreciate that. Randy Perkins was heavily involved in that part of our analysis, and he met with all of the potential vendors that we were suggesting. We made certain that there would not be any services disrupted or any features and benefits taken away. If anything, the services that the new vendors are providing would be enhanced or greater than what you have now. So we made sure that we weren't taking any functionality or customer service away. And of course, council will be involved in approving all of those contracts. And, ultimately it's up to the city what you'd like to do. We're just here to make suggestions and try to fund the project as best as we can.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Elena, would you let the record show that Mayor Pro Tem joined us at 6:44? Thank you, Denise.
And I do want to mention, we have, we're working on references now for all of them. So we're working on calling the references for those organizations that offer the same service.
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Okay, so as far as what our next steps are, we've met with 3 different manufacturers of water meters. We're going to be doing a very comprehensive side-by-side, apples to apples comparison. This is not just about pricing, it's also about functionality. We're taking warranties into account. We want to consider the long-term cost, not just the one-time upfront cost. And ultimately, it's up to the city to decide what will work for your day-to-day operations, what will fit in with your current billing software, for example. We're just, again, here to bring options to the table, and then the city gets to decide what will work best for it. So we're going to be doing that analysis next and also doing a deeper dive on the telecom. And software is also a big part of this. Obviously, the meter is the hardware, but we need a way to receive the signal from that meter. Right now, the meters are AMR or radio. That's what the R stands for. So someone physically has to drive around and pick up those radio signals. AMI goes to a cellular option, which goes straight into the cloud, which is going to help streamline operations, save everyone a lot of time, and also be able to detect leaks much faster and more frequently. Rather than waiting for someone to do their drive around reading and find that, there's a lot of consumption this month versus last month, it'll come in every 24 hours. So these are all things that we're going to be evaluating as part of the full turnkey package.
I do want to mention with that, we'll also have a customer portal. So you can log in to see what's happening with your water usage. And then if you have a leak, if they see you've used a lot of water, it will notify you, hey, you may want to look at this, which could save the customer a lot of money if they have a leak and we don't know about it for 30 days. Because right now, if somebody has a leak, we don't know until we go out and do another read. And it may mean that somebody has a very high bill.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide. So Julie, you asked about the financials of the project. So what we've done is come up with a prospectus of, what would a full turnkey solution with all of the bells and whistles cost. And so you see on the right, everything that would be covered. Right now, we're at a conservative figure of $3.4 million. And again, it's our responsibility within the performance contract to figure out a way to pay for that $3.4 million over a 20-year period or less. And we're pretty confident we have a path to success, especially with the boost in revenue and some of the billing that's not being captured right now. In addition, there will also be some operational savings that come with the upgraded system. So we'll take all of that into account. That being said, that cost can go down. We did let all 3 of the manufacturers know that this is a competitive situation. So they'll be bringing their sharpest pencil to the table. It's all for the city's benefit to get, again, the best balance of cost versus functionality. So we'll have more updates here in a couple of months, especially after we hear back about our earmark request and once we apply for the DOLA grant in November. Next slide. So I want to make sure we mention we have not forgotten about some of the challenges at the municipal buildings. It's just the water meters have taken up a lot of our staff's resources and time to get that project going, but we will be providing some updates in our next visit about where things stand for things like lighting and heating and air conditioning at city buildings. I know this room in particular is not always that comfortable, so we'll be doing what we can to address those issues. So again, we're going to be evaluating all of the software that goes with the 3 different manufacturers. We're going to do that side-by-side comparison of pricing and functionality. We've got our DOLA grant that we'll be doing in November. And then we'll continue to look at City Hall and Memorial Hall improvements, as well as evaluating all of the telecom contracts. Any other questions?
Council, questions? I have several. I'm sorry, Julie, did you? Okay, yeah. And it's a question I think probably Mr. Shada shares it with me, and that's trying to figure out how the leak detection works. I mean, right now, we know how much water leaves the treatment plant, how much water we've treated, and we can add up what we bill people for, and there's a big discrepancy. It's that, do we need to have intermediate meters that tell us how much is going into, say, a particular neighborhood so we can isolate where we have leakage problems? I mean, historically, that's been a huge problem with Manitou. We run around and usually in the course of finding something else, we find a broken pipe or a leaky pipe, or sometimes the leaky pipe, it bubbles to the surface or whatever. If you could expand on how this leak detection system works, I think that would be helpful. Again, we know what leaves a water plant. We would know what an individual house is using based on, on their meter reading, but it's that in between where the water gets out of the system and it's not metered. How do we address that?
Sure. So one of the features of the meters that we're considering is an acoustic leak detection technology. And each meter would be equipped with this acoustic technology. And so what it does is it sends out a signal and triangulates with all of the other meters in that neighborhood. And so it's able to narrow down where a leak might be happening, even if it's in between the meters in the distribution system. And obviously with the topography in Manitou, that's a challenge. So that's something that we've held the manufacturers to task for, making sure that the cell towers are able to handle the challenging topography and make sure that we get good signals to be able to utilize that technology. And Tyler, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. He's my technical guru.
Yeah, so that is one option, and the other 2 options, they're each a little different. For example, one of the options is putting sensors at gate valves throughout the distribution system, and I can't recall the third option there, but more or less, each of them are a little bit different in terms of how they focus on the infrastructure side. All the meters currently, I mean, it's just standard that as it goes through the meter, it will have a leak detection on there with the ultrasonic meter. They are like the most accurate, 100% guarantee for 20 years, and they can detect pretty much anything going through the meter. The infrastructure side, each one of them is a little bit different. The one option with the acoustic is all built into it. And then the other 2 options, they have kind of as a separate system. So it's they're each a little bit different at the end of the day. But we are working through that to try to get the best apples comparison there at the end of the day. So does that answer your question?
It helps. It gives me a little bit of insight as to how it works. I've also seen where leak detectors, professional leak detection company, it was actually in my neighborhood. They were off by about $4,000. They made a mistake. They said it was on a neighbor's property, and they spent $4,000 trying to find a leak that wasn't there. So I'm a little skeptical that's always going to work 100% for 20 years. But if we can do better than what we've been doing, that would be a step forward. And at some point we'll learn to live with a small amount of leakage, maybe 10%. But if we've got 30, then we definitely want to be aggressive about finding leaks and fixing them. It's just irresponsible not to. But your explanation was helpful. I do appreciate that. So,
yep.
Anybody else? Julie.
Oh, just a few follow-up questions. So, should I assume that the estimated turnkey project cost is all pretty much upfront money? It's not something that can be paid over time. Is that correct? We have to borrow $3 million and get this done. Is that right?
So it would be borrowed through what's called a tax exempt lease purchase agreement. And then how the performance contracting program works is that at least for the first 3 years under statute, we have to guarantee any utility savings or revenues that we're projecting. So if for some reason you don't recoup as much revenue to cover that first year of debt service, Schneider Electric by statute has to write a check to the city of Manitou Springs to make it whole. So the idea is that the additional revenue and cost savings over time will offset the cost of the debt service on an annual basis.
And was that just for the first 3 years that the Schneider covers us, or is that for the duration of the 20-year thing?
So the first 3 years are guaranteed by statute, and then after that period, you can continue that guarantee for a small fee for us to do the reporting on an annual basis. Some folks typically see savings far and above what we've come up with. We tend to take a very conservative approach because we don't want to toe the line where we owe you money this year, not next year, and it's a constant yo-yo. Oftentimes, our clients see anywhere between a 10 to 15% savings above and beyond what we projected.
And is the 4.5% interest rate, is that pretty typical for this type of a loan?
That has been typical, but I will say just over the last 2 weeks, interest rates have come down. The Fed is meeting on September 18th, so we expect that they might even drop a little bit further. However, just knowing that this project probably won't happen until springtime, we can't obviously make any predictions about that. But interest rates for these types of projects have been sitting between about 4.5% and 5.5% for the last couple of years.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Judith?
I'd like to do just a follow-up. I mean, obviously, we would need to rely on heavily, possibly on grants, money, non-loaned money or borrowed money. I mean, 3.4 million, if we're going to recoup an average of 141.3, it's going to take us 24 years to break even. And so, I mean, I'd have to have, in other words, in order to buy into it, I certainly would want to exhaust any and all resources we'd have to chip into that 3.4 million. Otherwise, I'm scratching my head and wonder, because I mean, the water meters ultimately need to be replaced, but the interest rate notwithstanding even,
Right.
So those are the things that, I think about too.
Of
I'm sure
course.
you are as well.
So we have to provide a cash flow to the Colorado Energy Office proving over that 20-year period, this is going to pay for itself. So the projected increase in revenue is just one piece of that puzzle. We also have escalation rates that the city will probably impose over time. That's very typical of a utility. There are other factors that come into play to make sure that cash flow works. So if we cannot furnish a cash flow that is budget neutral every year for 20 years, the Energy Office will reject the project. So it's up to us to prove that and make sure it happens. And again, we use very conservative numbers, so we want to give you some breathing room. But yes, I understand the concern, but hopefully next time I'm sitting here giving my next update, we'll have a solid cash flow for you to investigate. And at this point, obviously grants are wonderful and they give a huge boost to the project. But in the event that we don't get any of the additional grant funds we're going after, we believe that we can still do a water meter change out project. It just, again, might not come with the leak detection technology or some of the extra features. But we do feel like it's feasible. That 3.4 was, an estimate of everything that could possibly go on that meter feature wise, accounting for, all of the labor that needs to happen. And obviously we need to make appointments with people. These are in people's homes. So we do have some no-shows. We need to account for that lost time, for example. It should only go down from there is always what we strive for. So again, this is a competitive situation too. We want to make sure all the manufacturers and vendors know that they're competing for Manitou's business, and we'll facilitate those solicitations for proposals.
Julie?
I forget the words you just used, but you used some words that I think you meant raising the water rates for your customers over time. I forget. Escalation, that's what you called it. Are you
Correct.
talking about raising the rates? Is that what you meant by escalation?
Correct. The cost per gallon of water for,
And is
the
there
customer.
any particular rate increase that you've built, that you kind of built into your assumptions here when you were doing your calculations?
not at this time. In fact, the city is doing a rate case starting next week, I believe. Or very, very soon.
Very soon.
Yes. So once we get that official rate case back, that'll give us some really good data to work with and a good baseline for us to use.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, council? Okay, this is basically informational, so we appreciate the update. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Okay, so next we move into business, and our first business item this evening is consider appointing Matthew Murphy to the Historic Preservation Commission. I see we have our chair, Sue Presti here, the chair of HPC. And do we have Mr. Murphy? Okay, great. I guess, council, we've all had a chance to review the application information. I guess it would be appropriate to maybe first call on Chair Presti to make her comments, and then we'll entertain Mr. Murphy. So, Sue, if you'd like to take the mic, just need your name and title, please, address.
Good evening, Council. Susan Presti. I live at 114 Cave Avenue, and I currently serve as the chair of the Historic Preservation Commission. We're very excited that a new member of our community, Matthew Murphy, is interested in participating. He is very adamant about the quality of our historic community, our structures, and even though he does not have specific historic preservation expertise, he is qualified for real estate, so he has a great deal of information and knowledge about real estate, and we just think he would be an excellent addition to our commission, bring a lot of energy and passion to saving our historic structures in our community. So we are, the vice chair and I both met with him, and we are recommending his appointment, excuse me.
Great, thank you very much. And with that, Mr. Murphy, you'd like to come forward? Council, we've all had a chance to review the materials in the packet. I think what would be appropriate now is to give Mr. Murphy an opportunity to make a statement, and then if we have questions or comments, council will do that. Mr. Murphy?
Yes, thank y'all for having me. I'm Matt Murphy. I live at 7 Elk Path, right up the road. And I'm excited for the opportunity and for y'all to
Could you
consider
move
me.
a little closer towards the
Sure.
mic or move the mic towards you?
Sure.
Yeah, okay.
Is that
Great,
better?
thanks.
Yep. So as Susan said, I'm really eager to join HPC, and my family and I, we moved here back in May, and we have 2 older homes up on the hill. So I understand the importance of the commission, and I would love to do my part.
Okay, thank you. Council, do you have questions or comments for Mr. Murphy? Julie?
I think you should just state your address for the record.
Sure, it's 7 Elk Path, Manitou Springs.
Anyone else? In that case, I'd entertain a motion. Mayor Pro Tem?
I just have a quick question. What's
Oh.
driving your interest in historic preservation? It seems like this is fairly new for you.
Sure. So the 2 homes that we purchased are both 1890s. They're very old. They do need a lot of work also. And so I do want to, over the next few years, make improvements upon them. And I know that I'm in the historical commission boundaries. So I read up on it and I attended a few meetings, and I just learned more, and I want to be a part of it, join the community.
Any other comments or questions? In that case, I'd entertain a motion. Michelle?
I move that we appoint Matthew Murphy to the Historic Preservation Commission.
And I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let's vote.
Counselor Johnson,
Natalie, are you there? She may have, I told her if she got to feeling bad just to bail out. So, okay.
Okay, the motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. Thank you. Matthew, congratulations. Thank you very much. We appreciate you stepping up to serve.
Yes, sir. Thank you all.
We hope you find it rewarding. Thank you. Next item is final action on a potential land donation. This is the Burns Road property. We discussed that back August the 6th. Denise, do you want to
Yeah,
introduce?
Mayor, I'll do a quick introduction. We also have Jillian here who was at the OSAC meeting, but you asked us to take this back to OSAC, have them look at it. So we did such, and you saw that they voted 6-1 to not move forward with it. So we brought that to you for your consideration. And tonight we're asking if you would like for us to move forward with the donation, or if you would like for us to say no to the donation. So that's the direction we're asking for.
Great, thank you. The council, I think the packet was pretty complete. We could, I'd sort of like to open this up to discussion. If you have comments, or we could go around the table and just get a feeling for where people are at with this. Any comments? Judith, looks like you. Yes, Judith.
Well, I just wanted to say that I attended the OSAC meeting as well as the council liaison, and I just want to report back that the bulk of the conversation on the donation to accept or not, to recommend to accept or not accept it, was largely dependent on the city's recommendation that it not be accepted. And I just want to put that out there, that was the primary deciding point, with Tim Beeson, the chair, being the vote in favor of donation. Thank you.
I should mention also, I was contacted by Tim Beeson, I guess it was Saturday. I think he he's on vacation. He left, there's been a trip he's planned for some time. So he's out of town for a week. But he said if it wasn't for that, he would be here tonight. So anyway, just to fill that in. Do we have anyone here from most? Okay, sir, if you'd like to come forward. I'm sorry, if it has to go green. Okay, welcome. Okay, all right, let's start over.
David Conley, 335 Rockledge Lane. I'm an alternate member, and Tim Beeson, being out of town, asked me if I could appear to answer any questions. Council Chandler just explained, we did have a discussion and we were aware of the staff's recommendation. The main comments were, although there is a road to the property, Burns Road, obviously, there's no really ready access to the property. It's very steep. It's almost a cliff in places rising above the road. Most of the committee members had viewed the property, either gone onto Burns Road or looked up at it. And also we had aerial photograph in front of us. There was no connection to existing open space or parks from this parcel. As you know, the highway right away is kind of held up by it. It's kind of it's the hillside that supports the bypass. And then as Ms. Chandler said, it was a 6-1 vote. So it was pretty strong that there was not any strong connection for open space. There was one comment that there might be, and this was Tim Beeson, there may be some other public benefit from accepting the donation, but we just didn't see it from the open space standpoint.
Thank you. Does council have questions or comments? I think that was very helpful. Thank you.
I have a
Julie?
question. Has anyone from OSAC spoken with the neighbors?
No, I don't believe any step like that was taken. It was looking at the property, looking at its location, its connection, topography.
Thank you.
Good. Mr. Shada?
So OSAC has their own evaluation form, and on page 33, I did go back and look at the meeting, and I noticed that nobody referred to the fact that your own analysis had concluded that all those parcels by parcel number be included in open space. So I was a little disappointed that nobody looked at your own analysis and tried to figure out why that was a determination that you have it in your miscellaneous parcel evaluation plan. So I just wanted to make that on the record that that was not discussed in that document, was not brought up. Thank you.
Mr. Shady, are you referring to the outlot inventory or are
Yes,
you referring?
exactly. On page
What?
33.
But the outlot, isn't the outlot inventory the inventory of parcels the city holds,
No.
owns?
No,
That's my understanding
No.
of it.
no.
Okay. Don't know.
It is a mixture of things, but it does call out these parcels for inclusion as well as the two additional parcels that are there on Burns Road between the proposed donation and the property that we already own at the end of Burns Road. So I just
Okay.
wanted to state that for the record.
Very good. Thank you. Julie?
I just have a clarification question. What's this document called that you're referring to?
Post.
On page 33, the individual miscellaneous open space parcel evaluations. And on page 33, that it gives a determination as well as it calls out all these parcels except for that funny little thing that's on the top. Okay.
Can you tell me when that was determined to be, when did?
I'm sorry, it's an undated document.
So it just means that it's an OSAC document. At some point, OSAC decided that this is an important parcel to purchase. Is that
That's right.
correct?
There's a criteria that says recommended for inclusion, non-inclusion, and is marked as inclusion. Okay,
Mhm.
so it does not identify any particular hazards. It's in anything else or different than any of the other parcels that are included in the document for inclusion. So it's on page 33.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Conley? Okay, yeah, Judith?
I want to thank OSAC for taking a look at this. I think it's really important to have your input. And I think that it's really important to take, into consideration staff recommendations. I also want to say that I agree with your chair. I think that it is a donation. And if for no other reason, I see it as a view shed. And I would be, I'm certainly erring on the side of wanting to accept that donation. It's my understanding, and tell me if I'm wrong, Denise, there are already, I mean, with regards to, potential liabilities, there are already two sections that the city has, I'm going to use the word easement. I don't know if that's the right word, for potential future roads or something, but the city owns two swaths of that between those parcels. So it's not like we're liability free anyway. So I would be prone to just for the view shed and the land donation, I would be prone to want to approve it. Thank you.
Other comments? I guess I'll mention, I feel like this would be a bad move for the city. I think we'd be accepting the liability of some irregular, some rough land. We'd have drainage and it's geologically active. There are many other spots in Manatee. The whole valley is geologically active. Yeah, it's difficult. I don't think we would be doing ourselves a favor by taking this on and essentially making ourselves liable for the drainage and the additional maintenance. So I think this would be a bad decision for the city. I think it would be, there are other things certainly that open space does, other parcels that are valuable, that would become valuable pieces of recreational property, good link trails and so forth. I don't think this is it. It's basically a isolated dead end piece of property. Other comments? Okay, great. Oh, I'm sorry, Julie. I'm sorry.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I think there are some members of the public who wanted to speak to this issue that are here tonight, and I was wondering if you would give them an opportunity to speak.
Yes, I think that would certainly be a good idea. Thank you, Mr. Conley. Yeah, do we have, well, if we have the owners of the property here, why don't we give them an opportunity and then anyone else? The owners are not here. Okay. Is there anyone here who'd like to speak to this? Mark? Okay, you got 3 minutes. Standard rules.
Excuse me. Mark Lee, 413 Washington Avenue. And I live right below one of these parcels. One of the things that I love about Manitou Springs, and especially the neighborhood that I live in, is that the densely built historic district also has a strong relationship with the natural environment in which it sits. The undeveloped natural spaces here and there provide a sort of oasis, a resting place for the eyes, the ears, and the spirit. I personally love that we're able to live in this community and not feel completely surrounded and pressed upon by commercial interests. I'd like to think that the landowners who want to give this property as a gift to the current and future citizens of Manitou share this sentiment. My fear is, if this generous donation is turned down by the city government, this property will eventually be recognized as a money-making opportunity for an outside developer. Though it may not seem commercially viable to develop right now as it sits, since I've been here in Manitou, we have seen new builds in improbable places. So to me, it's not a matter of if it will eventually be developed, it's more a question of when. When that happens, whether it's 3 years from now or 30 years from now, I feel it will be extremely detrimental to the quality of life for those who currently live in the neighborhood. So I'd like to ask you to please consider accepting this land donation on behalf of the citizens of Manitou Springs. And I also want to let you know, I was able to speak with one of my neighbors, Leslie Kingman. I'm not sure her address. I think it's 411.
Mark, can you get a little closer to the microphone?
Yeah.
About 3 inches or so.
Yeah, I was able to speak with one of my neighbors, Leslie Kingman. I'm not positive her street address. I think it is possibly 411 Washington, but she also shared pretty much the exact same sentiments that I just shared with you. So thank you for your consideration.
Great. Thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to speak to this? Well, anyone in the audience, and we'll come back to council. Apparently not. Okay, Nancy?
Yeah, I just wanted to share that I wasn't inclined to approve this at the last time we heard about it. And with OSAC's recommendation, I'm even less inclined to approve it. I do think that I wish I had as much confidence in the altruism of the owner in wanting to donate it. But I think ultimately it's just to transfer liability from themselves to the city. And I don't think that that would ultimately be a good investment for the city. So I'm not supportive of this. Sorry.
Julie?
I continue to be supportive of this, and my reasoning is similar to what Mark Lee just expressed, which is that, because I live right around the corner from there, I know you do too, Mayor, and I just think it's important for us to have this view corridor, some open area where there's no buildings, and we have the benefit of that now, but it won't stay that way forever. Especially if someone decided to purchase a number of those parcels together, they could go ahead and build something up there. And I think it's so wonderful that we just have some raw land and open space. I also, and maybe the city attorney can comment on this, but all this hype about liability and like that, I don't understand where that's coming from. It doesn't sound like it has any basis to me. Is the city suddenly, I mean, if we think that this property is currently unsafe and we've done nothing about it to force it to be safe, I mean, we have insurance, we own lots of land, and a lot of the land we own is steep. And there are big rocks out there too, and they could fall down the hill. Are we supposed to just give all our open space back to commercial development and say, forget it, we don't want the liability? I mean, I can't imagine that our insurance company is going to say, oh, we're raising your rent because there's a big rock on that land that you own. I mean, I don't get it with this liability thing. So I guess I need more information, concrete information, I guess, from the attorney on what, if any, additional liability concerns are there when we decide to accept a donation for free of steep land with rocks on it.
Well, I mean, that's an open-ended question, as you know. I mean, I can't just say you have liability, you don't. You have governmental immunity for a lot of things. You're protected.
Would you explain that to everybody for me, please, Jeff?
Yeah, I mean, general, what the Colorado Governmental Immunity Act provides the city with is immunity from tort-based claims,
You have
which are,
to say that in regular words.
I was just gonna say it. I didn't get to finish the sentence. So claims that are based in tort are like claims that, like negligence for things that you do without reasonable care to harm other people. And so you don't get immunity for contracts. You know, you don't get immunity for things that you agree to take on via agreement. But for general sort of governmental operations and that kind of thing, you have immunity. So you have immunity for a lot of things that occur on your property.
When we have immunity, that means if somebody sues us, we're allowed to say, sorry, we don't owe you anything, and the case ends right away, right?
That's basically right.
Okay.
There are certain exceptions to the Governmental Immunity Act. There are certain things where you don't have immunity for. Just generally owning land is not one of the exceptions, though. So, you know, ultimately you have protections, you have insurance. I agree. When you own property, you do take on liability to some degree, and it would just depend upon the situation, what's on the property, what you knew of. Is it a dangerous condition that potentially could be related to other things? If you're using it for certain things, you might have waivers of immunity. So, you know, you do take on more liability when you own more property, but, you know, generally you aren't just going to take on some massive amount of liability. But it really depends upon the situation and what happens. So I see your point, but you do have some liability depending upon the exact nature of what could happen on your property.
So if I can paraphrase and make sure I understand, that we all understand it. So if we get sued because some big old rock rolls down the hill and hurts somebody, or there's a flood that is because we have bad erosion control, whatever it is, if we're sued for a tort, so for hurting anybody or hurting anybody's property, then the general rule is that we don't have to pay anything because we're a government.
Generally, that's right.
And then there's exceptions to that rule, right?
Yep.
And those exceptions are like if there's something really obvious that we could have, should have, would have prevented that any normal person would prevent, or I can't even think of an example right now, but there are some exceptions that
Yeah.
would pertain to raw land.
Yeah, there's specific exceptions for like operating like a sewer system or a water system or dangerous conditions of roadways and that kind of thing. But, you know, generally just nothing that's applicable, no waivers generally applicable to raw land.
So with raw land ownership, our liability for raw land is zero because of the Government Immunity Act.
Yeah,
Is
I'm
that
never
right?
Well, you say zero.
Well, you never
Not
can
gonna get
say
me to say
zero.
that.
But as a general rule, you can't anticipate at this time any particular action where we would be liable.
No.
Okay, so my understanding is that there was discussion at this OSAC meeting about, oh, big rocks, steep hill, liability, just like it was all in the staff report, all those same comments. I find those comments to be irrelevant. I think that we should accept this donation. I don't know that the city has ever rejected a donation. We're going to reject a donation of free land because what if the land hurts somebody and we get sued? Well, we already know the answer is the case gets dismissed. So, you know, I don't understand the benefit to the city in rejecting this offer. I need more information like from Nancy on what liability, what are you worried about so I can understand it better, because I don't see it.
Nancy?
If I could, Denise, why have we not required the owner to fix some of the issues that they are currently, we know exist on the land?
Well, currently I would say that there's some drainage, but that's throughout the city of Manitou Springs. So we have that throughout. Right now, we're working with CDOT to get that fence repaired, because if you walk up there, there's the concern with that fence and if it's going to break. So that's our number one concern. And then we're working on our area, the land that we own, because there's some drainage issues there that we're working with. So right now, it's not showing that there's a drainage issue or anything that's going to happen today that is saying, okay, we need them to do this or do that. So that's why we haven't done anything at this point. But we are working on the other two issues, which is the CDOT fence. That's a big concern, and we need to get that repaired quickly.
And in my experience, if a city-owned land, if we know that there's a problem and it ends up destroying someone else's land, we do have responsibility for that.
There could
And we have
be,
to mitigate that.
there could be certain other types of like trespass claims perhaps that you may not have a waiver for, but I'm not really sure if community applies to that or not. So if you have something that comes off your land into somebody else's land, that could potentially be a trespass, depending upon how it is caused, maybe. I think the other thing is that, you know, immunity or not, and the question really is, do you want to have a piece of property that may have issues that you have to deal with? I mean, you could say we're not going to have to deal with something that's going to cause a landslide, but legally you're not liable for it. Does that mean that you're not going to do something about it? You know, that's a policy issue, not a legal issue. So might be a little different than legally are you required to do it.
Anyway, my desire would be that the owners fix these issues as opposed to the city having, because I think issues definitely need to be fixed. But I don't think that the city should have to fix them. So that's my opinion on that. Thanks.
Great, thank you. John, I think you were next.
I'd like to also bring into the record that the city does have a debris flow map, okay? It is posted on our website. And had we gone down this pike, we would have essentially never have touched Red Mountain or Iron Mountain as open space, okay? That is, those are like just red like crazy in the debris flow. We would never Mickey Mouse around with the Ute Trail. That is a huge debris flow. We would never Mickey Mouse around with the incline or the Bar Trail. That is in a huge debris flow area. This area, on the record, is completely clean according to this USGS study, okay? You go up and walk on that road, okay? And the city engineer's testimony that talked about the drainage issue, okay, is already property that we own, which is at the end, okay? And I want to remind people that when Sunwater Spa did that development, okay, they knew good and well all along that there was water coming down that hillside. And you are responsible as a downhill landowner, am I not correct, Jeff? Okay, that when water conveys from uphill from you, that you have to basically convey that water down on your property as well, okay? And you're responsible for it. In other words, once it hits your property and it's a natural flow, okay?
That's the key word.
Then it's yours.
Yep. That's right.
Okay? And that's what's happening up there. Nobody has gone up. You can walk that road back and forth. I have done it with a half a dozen of the neighbors up there. Okay, nobody's changing any of this flow. Nobody is creating any more hazard or not. We already own this. It's not in this. And I am in complete concurrence with Mark. I think these little jewels of open space, even though there's no chance of probably anybody wanting to hike in that area, okay? The fact that there is only natural type of water that falls on that area, that means that all that wood and all of that flora that's on that hillside is all just about as natural as you can get. There isn't like a weed growing on that hillside because there just isn't any artificial irrigation up there at all. It's all stuff that's been growing up there for the past, who knows, 10,000 years. Okay. And I am in full concurrence with what Mark says. And there's a lot of properties, okay, that if you can assemble them, okay, so that you can have a whole series of lots. The reason why, in my opinion, none of that's being developed, when you compare that hillside against what just went in, that's now under construction near Sunwater Spa down there. That whole neighborhood always said, nobody is going to develop that lot. And it got developed. Well, why did it get developed? Because there's water and sewer and gas lines and electric lines and everything right there for you to tap into. Some developer takes a hold of these 4 or 5 parcels, okay, and can assemble maybe 1 or 2 more. We will end up with essentially somebody who will use essentially a technique that's used down on Lower Washington down there to develop these lots as very difficult to develop lots. And I think that would be a tragedy and a shame for us to lose that view corridor. And I totally understand, and that was part of the deliberations of open space, that there's no trail purpose, okay? That there is, and I get that. But the vast majority of the open space we own, okay, is not navigable with a trail, okay, or even just has a small trail that goes through it. So to me, that just doesn't sync up. I strongly believe we ought to just thankfully accept this property. I do not believe that there is any additional maintenance. It is not a geological hazard. Okay. And all the testimony that the city engineer did was already on land we already own with a property owner who is actually conveying that water and in some cases is using it as a part of kind of a waterfall effect on their current property. So the rest of this property, especially these parcels, to me, as far as I can tell from talking to almost every one of those property owners along there, okay, these uphill parcels are not conveying rocks, mud, debris, okay, or in any imminent danger of hurting anybody or any downhill property owners. And I don't believe that we would take on any additional liability like what Councilor Wolf pointed out. So I strongly advocate that we accept this donation of property. Thank you.
Michelle?
I move that we accept the donation of the 4 parcels of land, parcel numbers 740-543-2011, 740-543-2019, 740-543-1003, 740-543-2010 to be designated as open space.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, the motion is to accept the parcels as a donation. Let's vote.
And the motion carries 4-2 with Mayor John Graham and Mayor Pro Tem Nancy Fortune as the dissenting votes.
Okay, thank you. And I guess I would say, although I was in the dissenting vote, this is one of those thorny questions. I think the keeping the view space, there's certainly value to that. So, okay. Yeah. Let's go ahead and take a quick break here. And then we've just got a couple of minor things and we'll go into executive session after that, pending a motion. Okay, let's take a 10-minute break.
Right now, it's nice.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanna do it. I'm reaching out to the man.
Yeah. I could, when we take a donation, do we want to still do another little title review?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
So do you want to do them?
Yeah.
I don't-
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
My last title donation did not go well.
Yeah, I got cleaned up though. That's what we got. I mean, it's like, that's part of the reason why it's worth it.
The
It's worth
insurance.
paying for it, right? So.
Okay, well, that's okay, no worries. Okay, let's go ahead and get started then. So we are at receive or act on council correspondence. Anybody have anything? Judith?
I do, several residents, and I apologize, a few of them were a couple weeks ago, and to be honest, it did escape me to bring it up at the last council meeting, but over the Labor Day weekend, I had another person, approach me with questions regarding the property on Manitou Avenue that is next to the Park Row Lodge, the house that burned down. This person, and I quote them, not me, said, what are we going to be doing about this heinous eyesore? And I know it's boarded up. I drove by. It's not fenced, but I was just wondering if you had any information on plans for that. I believe it's a house, a rental property or something. Do you any updates on that?
I don't have any update, but I'll look and see what I can find out.
Thank you.
Yep,
Appreciate
you
it.
bet.
Okay, thank you. And Julie?
Oh, I just wanted to know if there was any follow-up on my request. I wanted to have Sunday night through Thursday night, any kind of music playing at Soda Springs Park to stop at 9 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. And I had asked if this is an ordinance, in which case I'd like to move to modify it. I don't know if we have any, anyone.
I sent you a quick update on what was happening, right, and what occurred that night. I sent it to all of council. And yeah, your noise ordinance goes until 10 p.m. I believe I sent those details. If you want to change it, you just have to do it by ordinance.
I see. Okay, that's good to know. In that case, I don't know if there's any interest. Do I have to see if there's how do I get that on the agenda to discuss?
Well, we
that?
we could certainly see if council wants to discuss it here, and we put it on the agenda. And I guess I would kind of a tangential or related topic is I had a chance conversation with one of the people pretty involved in the drum circle, and he kind of felt it didn't go as smoothly as he'd like this year. So maybe that's another thing that should be looked at. Noise factors into that, but it's not solely noise. If council would like to discuss that a little bit, we could maybe do it at a work session and see.
Okay.
And go, okay, so we have,
Yeah.
okay, I'm seeing heads nod.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so we'll, I think probably we can talk about noise ordinance and then maybe some other issues and try to, at the same time, and then decide where we want to go from there. Does that sound reasonable?
Oh, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
The other thing is, I was just concerned about the, when we have events, I think we need to maybe increase our fees so that the people like with Commonweal Fair, the people who are selling their products should pay higher fees if need be, so that we have enough money to have extra staff available over the event, or in this case, over the 3-day weekend, to street patrol for parking enforcement, because it was a problem this weekend where people they couldn't get any help from parking enforcement. And, you can't just call a tow truck and tow somebody. You have to wait until they come back to work or whatever. I don't know what the exact solution is on how to get more parking enforcement people working on days when we have events, but I really think we need to do a lot better. There's some very unhappy people over the weekend, and I said I would just simply bring it up. I don't have the authority myself to force us to hire extra people on the busy weekends, but I think we should.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Julie. I got an email from somebody who lives down on El Paso or Pinion, one of those areas down there. It was late afternoon on Sunday, and he was having trouble getting a hold of the parking people. I was able to contact parking on Monday morning, and I think they were able to respond. But my understanding is parking had some problems with their telephone service or something. So that was a kind of a strange, maybe that needs to be looked into, but
Oh, wait, so it wasn't because they were understaffed, it's because they were having trouble with their telephone service?
well, telephone service was part of the problem. I don't know about staffing. That may have been, there are several things here, and maybe Denise, you want to look into that?
Yeah, Mayor, I'll look at it. I'm surprised none of you called me because I can usually get a hold of parking and see what's going on. So this is the first time I've heard about it. But I will definitely look at it and see what happened. I did not know that we were having problems with our telephones. And we had extra staff this weekend. So again, this is the first I've heard about it. I'm going to need to do some research. But as you know, I'm available 24 hours a day. You can always call me and I can usually get something resolved pretty quickly.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Yeah, John?
Almost all the times Commonweal is a great event and they take really good care of Memorial Park. And I try and make a real effort to thank Julia every time I see her. One thing I did notice this weekend is that we had all these parking spaces opposite of City Hall coned off for the entire weekend. All 3 days, nobody parked there. I have no idea why we cannot figure out whether we're using parking or not. Okay. Seems like to me that's a big waste in terms of first to cone stuff off and have nobody park there for all 3 days. Okay. There needs to be some management or some event management on the part of the city that notices this kind of stuff. Okay. This also occurred with parking that was set aside over at the Chase Bank as well. A large amount of that. And if you want to see the photos, you know, I've got them on that. Second thing, all right, is that, and I'm going to bring this up again and again and again, with Soda Springs Park, we have these events and people are parking in the interior of the park. There are children that are playing between those cars. We are going to run somebody over. If these event things cannot use the parking spaces on the street where they belong, okay? The parking was so congested, okay, especially for this bee fair or farmer's market thing. There was even a car parked on the sidewalk, okay, as you come across the bridge, that I guess they just thought that was just their own parking space for the entire day, okay? So to me, we have a plan in which we've agreed on in terms of redoing that park. And we agreed when we worked on that plan, okay, that was not the place for automobiles to park. And they are stacked in there left and right. And there are kids playing between those. And there are band members and whatnot that are in a hurry to get their instruments and what out of their car or their music and whatnot. And I am just really concerned that we have a huge safety problem. And people on this council know that I do not think we have a shortage of parking in this town. We have too many cars in the wrong places in this town. You've heard me say that over and over again. And the park, the Soda Springs Park, is not the right place for cars. You do not see how Julia manages this over here with all of her fairgoers parked in the park. No, they're parked on the street where they belong. So that's the end of my speech on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Michelle?
The porta potties at the Manitou Incline over this Labor Day weekend were not maintained, and they were out of toilet paper by Monday.
Okay. Okay, just before I forget, I've got two things in there. They're going to be relatively mild. One is first we will have a work session on the, I believe it's the 27th, 24th, excuse me. Yeah, Tuesday, the 24th, that's the fourth Tuesday. We'll be doing a makeup for the meeting that we're supposed to have several weeks ago, the joint meeting with the Planning Commission to discuss Plan Manitou. We had to cancel that meeting. So that's what we'll be doing on the 24th. I just wanted to give everybody a heads up because that'll be at 6. Okay. So that's the first thing. So we will have a meeting on that fourth Tuesday this month. And then next Tuesday, a week from tonight, the 10th, that's the national presidential debate, and that starts at 7. I was wondering if council would be willing to start here at 5. We have two things to talk about. One is an update on the LaFawn property from the URA, and the other is Mountain Metro. We'll discuss the spring bus schedule. We have those two things. I think we can get that done easily in 2 hours. but if council would be willing to start at 5, I think Michelle's probably the most constrained individual since you're still working.
5 o'clock is fine.
You'd be okay with 5? Would the rest of council be willing, want to do that? And then we hopefully get out of here by 7. And I think we'd all probably like to have the opportunity to watch that. Okay, those were 2 things I had. Before we go back to Mr. Shade, is there anybody who hasn't had a chance to speak? Okay, all right, John, you got it.
Okay. With regard to incline management for this weekend, notwithstanding Michelle's toilet paper issue, okay? The incline was closed this weekend, but when you look at the numbers, it was not closed, okay? All right. In fact, it had within 5% of the same number of people using the incline as the weekend before, okay? I don't know how this fell apart, okay, in terms of the messaging. I did go out, check on the incline reservation website, and even though it's rather difficult to kind of look at the small print and see what's closed, okay? But when we do this, and when we do not have the right amount of parking, and this is in our intergovernmental agreement in our MOU, that we get to control when this thing is open, when we have the right kind of resources for this kind of thing. As a result, the parking excuse show, S**T show, was really bad in Upper Ruxton because everybody was down here using the parking for the fair, including all of the merchants and whatnot. And so guess what? Where did the incliners go? They parked all up and down Ruxton, okay? And I got phone calls all over the place in terms of people not able. And there's not a lot that park and control can do except put a ticket, okay? And then wait for you to move it because they don't tow that quickly. But somehow or another, the numbers did not stack up in terms of us messaging. And the other thing that I guess I want to also, what was happening with this MOU, okay, is I also noticed, and these are numbers that staff gave us, okay, starting in May this year, okay, it used to be we had this no-show rate, supposedly. Something has shifted starting in May, where we now have dramatically more people, 40% more people by month coming and using the incline than in theory we have reservations for. So we either have some kind of a data problem going on, okay, in which things are flipped around. But as an example, this weekend, okay, that pedestrian counter showed more than 1,000 people a day accessing the incline. And in fact, it was closed. And I look back to see when we've done this before, okay? And we did this before, let me bring it up, during the last time we closed the incline. Well, actually, we had good compliance when we had the rocks, okay? When the rocks had to be removed, okay? We had very few things. So that tells me there's not a technical problem with what's going on in that trail counter, unless for some reason it just went wacko only for this weekend, okay? Because on either side of it, that trail counter seems to be okay. And the same kind of thing that happened when we closed it last September 16th and 17th for the marathon, okay? On those days, we had the number of people who were up and down the incline in just literally a few hundred people. It was very small. But this last 3 days, we had thousands every single day. So I don't know what's going on with that. I just wanted to bring it up because when this happens and we're allowing people in some way, I don't know whether it's a messaging problem or whatever, but when we are now suddenly having 1,000 more guests coming to town and we don't have parking for it, these people start using parking in RPP, okay, and all over town, all right? And this is just not fair to these Upper Ruxton neighborhoods, okay? When we say it is closed, it is closed. And I think we need to have some respect on this kind of thing. So I'm bringing it up because we're also negotiating this IGA. But it was really glaring this weekend. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are good insights. Yes, we're trying to reestablish a better working relationship with Colorado Springs Park and Rec. Things kind of fell apart for a while there. And there's some ending trying to be done between the staffs. But yeah, this was a pretty egregious offense. I can sympathize with all those people up on, well, the whole length of Ruxton. I mean, it feeds down into downtown for that matter. Right. Council, we have anything else under council correspondence? If not, let's go to the city administrator's report.
Yeah, I don't have anything. I mentioned the one that I think we have fixed a major leak. I'll be able to give more details when we get those numbers, but we're hoping it brings it down substantially. I knew you were going to ask that, so I didn't want to bring it up because it was like, where is it? I will let you know. I'm sorry, they told me, but I can't wait. So I'll let you know. It's close to the creek. And so they thought it was really that it was the creek that was happening, but when they researched it and found it, it really wasn't that. So it's been missed for years, but I will let you know the exact location.
Great, thank you. Okay, with that, we've come to the executive session. So I'll go ahead and read that and I'll seek a motion to go into executive session, and then we'll take a few minutes to make the transition. An executive session to hold a conference with the city attorney pursuant to section 5.1D of the Manitou Springs Municipal Charter concerning the application of Colorado Governmental Immunity Act to claims for sewer backups. So I'd seek a motion to go into executive session.
I move approval.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Let's vote.
Counselor Wolf, did you enter your vote? The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, great. Thanks. Let's take about 5 minutes to make the transition, and then we'll reconvene in executive session.